right, boys and girls and boys, attack helicopters, or however you might identify. Who are we to say you're not any of those things? Today, my very special guest is Olivia, who is just another N=1, just another person to tell us her story. I say just, she's not just, she's fantastic. I've been watching Olivia and her postings on social media for some time now, hence is why I said to her, hey, would you like to come on my channel and cross-pollinate? Tell us your story. She said, yes, that'd be great. So let's start with, where do people find you on social media so they can go straight there after this and follow, subscribe, all of that?
Okay. So, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Bart, and always happy to cross-pollinate with you.
Excellent. Love it.
I'm on mainly Instagram and Twitter, and on Instagram, I'm Olivia Khwaja. So you'll probably see the spelling in the notes, but yeah, just the handle Olivia Khwaja on both Instagram and Twitter mainly.
Awesome. Very good. I will put that up on the screen so people can see it, and it will be in the show notes directly under the video for people to click on in a clickable format. I make it easy for you. You're welcome. Anyway, tell us your story. Where did you come from? What was your kind of background to all of this? How was health in general? What was right? What was wrong? How was the diet? How did you then change the diet? What made you change that diet? What happened when you changed it? The whole story, basically. Where you go.
Okay. Okay. So my background is very much outside of the nutritional science world. I have a family that actually are all very science-based. So I almost wanted to rebel against all of that. And I tried a different path. And I was always very interested in business and politics and that type of thing. So I did all my qualifications in that. In those disciplines. And I spent about 22 years in the business world, climbing the corporate ladder and very much enjoying the challenges that came with that and all the rewards that came with that. I worked for a couple of big brands in the UK. My role was always very much in strategy and marketing. And yeah, I had a good 23 years of doing that, which I found at a point started to really take its toll, because it's probably a bit of, myself as well and how I do things. But, I did start to feel the burnout, and I thought maybe there's more that I could be doing as well. I also had some life changes with my parents both passing away from Alzheimer's and type 2 diabetes, which caused me to rethink a few things. And I just got to the point where for at least the last 5 years of my career, I was looking for an out of some sort. So when one came along and I was able to take a package and just take some breathing space, I jumped at it and decided to just not even plan what to do next, but to just have some time to just absorb things and see how things go. And it was right before COVID hit. So I had the first year of literally homeschooling 2 kids. But then after that, I started to really started looking into nutrition a lot more, because one of my little personal projects was to see how I could prevent myself getting the metabolic illnesses that we'd had to nurse both my parents through for a decade, and which was, a really harrowing experience, and one which will never leave me, particularly when I think about conversations that I've had with my dad and how he went through all the different stages of Alzheimer's. And, there was a point where he was conscious that he was losing his faculties and his memory. And I remember having a conversation with him where he was just desperately looking in my eyes saying, but are they going to find a cure in time? Are they going to find a cure in time? And I knew that they wouldn't. And I was just didn't want to, shatter all his hopes. And so I remember thinking, gosh, I wish they could just find a way to prevent people going through this. It's just such a horrible thing to lose your whole being, and then spend 10 years with someone caring for you. It's just, it's not right for people to have to go through that if they don't need to. And, yeah, so that kind of thing really stuck with me, and all my mum's, tribulations as well. So I thought, let's look into nutrition, because who knows, maybe there's a way I can de-risk myself. But, my impression is I'm going to get these illnesses. My parents both had them. What chances have I got to avoid them? And so I started looking things up, and, not being from a science background, I was surprised to find myself very much quickly into the research and trying to understand the research. And I did do a lot of research in my role before, so I did have a little bit of an idea on how to look at research, but not necessarily from a science angle. But very quickly found that there was, decent enough evidence to show that you don't have to get all these illnesses, and that they're all connected. So all these things that we all, have the impression we might get because our family have had it, and they all seem like they're different things that occur in different parts of the body, and it's just potluck what happens to you in life. Actually they're all stemming from the same process, the same disease process, and there's a lot you can do to prevent yourself from getting them. You can almost eliminate the risk and have a long health span in your life, and not go through what the last 2 generations have had to endure from what I see as just totally bad information. So that really hit me hard, in combination with everything else going on, what I'd gone through with my dad. And it felt like, well, if my background is in strategically how you deliver a message to a population and take them along an education journey, then maybe I can add some value to this area and think about the problem from that angle. And around the same time, the Public Health Collaboration, who are a UK-based charity doing something very similar in terms of raising awareness on metabolic health, they were advertising for board trustees, and they were looking for people who had a commercial background. And I thought, well, that must be a calling for me. It just literally happened a couple of days after I'd had those thoughts. So I jumped at that chance, and luckily was able to take up that role. And so I've been kind of doing that for the last kind of year or so, and at the same time continuing to progress my own journey, because I very much moved to a ketogenic diet, and I was doing a sprint run at one point, because I used to run every day thinking that would help me lose weight, and I remember listening to Dr. Eric Berg, who was one of the first people I discovered on the internet, and didn't really know where he was coming from in some of what he was saying, but he said the sentence, "Good luck burning fat if you have sugar in your blood." And then as soon as he said that, it kind of landed on me like a ton of bricks. And I don't know what I was thinking before, but I must have, my impression was someone somewhere is totaling up how much I eat during the day and how much I expend, and that's what causes you to lose weight. And I really didn't see it as any more complicated than that. But that sentence literally stopped me in my tracks, and I realized I totally missed something. And, thought about the huge banana and oats smoothie I'd had that morning to fuel me for my run that I needed. And thought, right, okay, I'm going to understand this more and look into it more. And within about a week or so, I was on a ketogenic diet. And about a year and a half later, I moved to carnivore. But I did lose a lot of weight on keto. And it was as life-changing as many people find it. But then I also came across carnivore. First, didn't really understand it, or couldn't quite work out if it was for me and if there was any further benefit. But then I finally got convinced that if I'm on this journey of nutritional research, that I should just give it a go. And so I did. And that was about a year ago, and I've been really thriving on carnivore ever since then.
Okay, awesome. So how much weight have you lost? Because it seems that you're talking about weight loss as a major thing.
About 35 kilos.
Wow, that's quite significant.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say,
and it wasn't like I wasn't healthy. I never ate processed food, and I exercised like mad. Okay. So, it kind of blew my mind that very quickly, from such small, seemingly simple changes to your diet, you can literally change your whole metabolism, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you look fabulous. Absolutely. Of course, obviously. Great job. For those that work in the old money, that's well over 70 pounds that we're talking about. That's come off Olivia's body. So really, really quite significant. How tall are you, by the way, just so we can get an idea of the frame what that's come off?
5'2.5".
Okay. You're a wee shorty. You're a wee shorty.
I'm really short, yeah.
It's okay. I am too. I'm 5'6", and that's when I'm stood up at my full height going, I really am 5'6". Yeah. So, okay, that really is a lot to come off a frame that size then. Very, very impressive. Okay. So other health issues that might have been going on other than weight carriage? You say you were generally healthy. Does that mean nothing else was going on that you were aware of?
Not that I was aware of, but I did notice, despite that huge amount of change when I went, especially from keto to carnivore, like going to keto to start with, it was mainly weight loss and I guess feeling generally better about everything. But then you don't think you can squeeze any more out. beyond that, which is why I wasn't that kind of desperate to try carnivore. But when I did, I'd say the step up and the increase in benefits was more significant than even the jump to keto to start with. And it was a lot of things that I didn't even, hadn't factored in as something that a diet could even address. So it kind of blew my mind much more. And it's what has got me more involved in the carnivore community, because I think there's something so fundamentally right about it that, I'd love to think about how to grow it more. But, for example, I think the first thing that hit me was my athletic performance. So I, we used to work out every day, as I said. I used to go on this thing called a Watt bike, which is like a smart bike, and I used to climb a mountain every day. And I found within a couple of weeks of starting carnivore that I halved my time doing it. And I wasn't exactly not pushing myself before, but suddenly my performance was at a totally different level on it. And I couldn't believe it. I literally thought the bike was broken. And then I noticed that I didn't have to stretch. Like I forgot to stretch for a few days and had no muscle soreness, whereas before I'd always have had some muscle soreness. My running time went down very significantly again. And then what else? I noticed lots of body changes. So my skin was clearer. People saying I'm looking younger. I noticed that my strange one is that I used to have this really, sorry, it's a bit gross, but I used to have toenail fungus that plagued me for at least 15 years. And I think it's because I used to run a lot. So you have that kind of moist environment for your toes every day. And I had used, I don't know how many products to try and get rid of it. And I'd spent loads of these things, expensive products that you get. And nothing had ever shifted the damn thing. And one day I remember looking at my toe in the morning going, something's different about it. I can't work out what it is. And actually that fungus, even the fungus that was there, not the fungus that was, the regrowth, all of it had gone. And so I thought, that's just crazy. Like I never thought that had anything to do with diet. And then, my hair was, I did have hair loss, but it's all kind of grown back now. And what else? My eyes became a lot whiter. They'd been fairly red for a while because I'd been wearing contact lenses for many years. And my teeth got whiter. And probably the most significant thing was the mental health side of things. So I didn't have a mental health problem before, but I wasn't exactly, I guess, as on top of the moon about life as I could have been. And I literally woke up one day and it was midweek and I just felt like, that's it. I can't believe I'm alive. I'm so happy. I'm so excited to be here. What can I do? I love this world. I love that sky. It was the most strange, random feeling of euphoria that I'd experienced. And then I thought, well, that has to be something to do with diet. So if all of these little things that I never thought needed addressing have been addressed, and I'm someone who didn't have an autoimmune issue or anything that, would cause me to have to try this diet, then there is something fundamentally right about it, which is telling me that this is something people should at least try, if nothing else. And especially when I heard the arguments about it being the species appropriate diet, that makes total sense to me because I've experienced it. And when you feel your own body going through those changes in such a significant way, you kind of have to just agree with that. Like nothing else makes sense after that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of people at least having a go at it.
Right. Absolutely. So, I think I could probably offer up a mechanism by which I think the carnivore diet relates to all of those things that you're talking about. But before we get to that, let me, if you don't mind, be extremely forward and extremely rude. And I want to do this purely...
Like nothing left.
Great. I want to do this specifically to make a point once again. Okay? How old are you, young lady?
I'm 48.
Get the fuck out of here. No way. What do you think? Boys and girls, leave a comment. Sorry, you may not be a boy or a girl too. You might be an attack helicopter. If you are, write a comment underneath and tell us whether or not you think Olivia looks remotely 48, nearly. Remotely. Because if I didn't know any better, I would just look at you and I'd go early, mid-30s at most. Personally,
Oh my God.
that's what I would say.
I'll take that.
Yeah. I'm not doing that to blow smoke anywhere. I'm just suggesting that's how it appears to me. And you might say genetics. You might say, any of those kind of things. But you're not the only one. I mean, there seems to be a thing about people who eat a species-appropriate diet glowing on the outside, appearing much younger than they should. I mean, you probably know how old I am, but what would you guess if you had to, for example?
Well, I think you're 51, is that
Yeah, I am.
Maybe you haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you look 51 at all. I'd say 40s.
I mean, the grey hair and the beard is a bit of a giveaway because I haven't shaved today, for example, but, whatever. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. I'm glad you said the right thing there, because anyone that doesn't, of course, is guilty on my channel of hate speech. And you know what happens if you're guilty of hate speech? You will receive a little visit from a little friend of mine with his little truncheon. That bloke. You know him? Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this mechanism around the species-appropriate diet. Could you preempt? Would you have a guess as to what I'm likely to say, do you think? As to what, if you had to say one thing that causes by way of mechanism that the carnivore diet, the appropriate species diet for a human being, what is the one factor for people at large that is fixed, if you like, by that diet that causes all of these benefits that you were talking about before?
Are you going to say the Randall cycle?
Yeah, it really is in a roundabout sort of a way.
Yeah.
More directly, it's inflammation through any cause, be that Randall cycle, which is the big one on a mixed diet or a standard diet, yes.
Yeah.
But also it's the lack of anti-nutrients, plant toxins, which are all pro-inflammatory. It's the lack of fiber in one's colon that destroys the colonic function and causes inflammation, leaky gut, and all the sequelae involved in that. By the way, how long ago did you start this sort of carnivore fully diet without too much fiber or plant material?
Just over a year.
Right. So you haven't gone number 2s for a year. You must be pretty backed up.
Yep. Still waiting to go.
God, that must be horrible. And what about that scurvy that you died of about 11 and a half months ago?
Yep. As you can see.
Yep. Not to mention, of course, the heart disease and the colorectal cancer that you're absolutely a candidate for because why again? I don't know.
Epidemiology.
Oh, that's right. Epididly-doodly-moodly-mology. Good stuff, that is. Yeah. So, inflammation. That and, I think probably the hormonal responses, the resetting of that, not just the inflammasome, but all the hormonal systems and everything the way they should be.
Yeah.
It's almost as if it's a diet we've been consuming as a species, pretty much wherever your genes come from, for a very, very, very long time and have only really diverted away from in the last, blink of an eye geographically, isn't it? I saw a thing today that outlined it quite well. I thought it was a meme style presentation of the facts, which of course are all completely trustworthy memes. But this one seemed to be, and it said that if the human existence on the earth was converted to a 24-hour period, we started eating any amount of plant material at all in the last hour.
Yeah.
And processed foods, manufactured foods, seed oils, all that nonsense, food colorants, all that, flavor enhancers, preservatives, etc. About a minute ago.
Yep.
So, the genes are all geared around, the organ systems are all geared around, the consumption of a diet consisting of purely meat and fat. And as such, that's the positive and negative selection pressures that we've been under, and that's how our bodies have adapted. So often when I say that to any people that have antithetical views around the consumption of plants being a good idea or whatever, the first thing they always say to me then straight away is, oh yes, but you don't have sharp pointy teeth like this. So how can we be a carnivore? What do you normally say to these folks when they say that to you? Because I'm sure you've heard that before. I know it's not original.
Yeah, I do hear that a lot. I hear this argument that, our evolution, because it's the one thing that the carnivore diet does have, which is look at our evolution. Surely you take a lot. If you're going to hang your hat on anything, you'd hang it on that. There's so much contrasting information out there about, plants being of benefit and the right way to eat, and being an omnivore being the best way. And, how are you ever going to decide if we can never do the right types of trials that will definitively prove anything? That's a real difficult situation for any layman to have to navigate. So I just say, well, surely you'd look at evolution. I mean, that's the one thing that no other diet can claim that is going to give us the most clues about how we should eat. And so for me, it makes perfect sense. But yet people still argue against that, because they say, well, who's to say that just because you've evolved eating something, that's the best thing for you to eat? And for me, that doesn't even pass the smell test. But what I normally say is, well, we wouldn't have become the species we are, which is at the top of the food chain, and having transformed the whole planet with our being here, if we had been in any way, suffering from malnutrition, not able to continue to develop. And we have obviously had a setbacks in starting to eat plants and our brain size and our height and all that type of thing. But we're still, very adaptable and able to cope with that and stay at the top. We just have to then carry this burden of disease. So, I think it's a strange argument. I think a normal person out there hearing that would say, well, obviously evolution counts. Obviously that's how we should be looking at nutrition through that lens. So, I do think it's a really shaky argument to argue against evolution. You can argue against the lack of trials, the lack of research, the lack of statistical evidence, but you can't argue against the evolution as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'd have to agree with you. Absolutely, of course. And for me, I mean, the fact is that these buffoons that say this sharp, pointy teeth argument, they think they're actually invoking evolution, proof that we're not carnivores because we lack the tools to be a carnivore, which they perceive for some reason to be sharp, pointy teeth like this and claws.
Yeah.
To which my answer, you can use this if you like. I'll give this to you. You can use it anytime you like.
I was just going to say at that point, Bart, that I have had that argument as well. And I said, well, it doesn't matter how we got our food. It matters what we ate.
Yes.
It matters what our body had to actually process and thrive on. It doesn't matter the tools rather than, ran up and bit something and took it down. That's irrelevant. It's a circumstantial situation that has allowed us to get to a point of eating mainly ruminant fatty meat through our evolution. Yep. And that's what is important. It's what we ate, not how we got hold of it.
Yes, exactly that. And that's the point that I make with this response, I guess, which generally gets the point across, I think, quite well. And that is to these people that say, we don't have those. I say, well, can you show me a cave painting of hunting men diving at woolly mammoth with their mouths open so that they can tear their throats open with their sharp, pointy teeth?
Yeah.
Well, no, the pictures show the hunting men with sharp, pointy sticks to serve as teeth. And indeed, in later times, you'll find that there is the gut of an animal strung across a stick and a sharp, pointy stick drawn back through that so they can fire that with force at a distance. You'll find pictures of them holding and throwing rocks, clearly shouting and, making noise and working together and communicating using that tool. And this tool up here and the opposable thumbs to make the sticks in the first place. It's incredible. You won't find a picture of men diving at animals at all with their mouths open. So there's no positive selection pressure to mean that we would have those, and no negative selection pressure against not having those, because I've never sat down to a meal of steak at the table and said, Pim, I'm sorry, I can't eat this. For I don't have sharp, pointy teeth like this, you see. I have a knife and fork. It works. Nom, 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 nom. No problem at all. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Yeah. So that's kind of my answer.
Neither do you see cave paintings of legumes or pulses or salads.
No pictures of ancient people sitting around the table with plates and plates of indigestible plant material, salads made of things that weren't yet invented because they're all human inventions, those kind of so-called plant-based foods. They didn't even exist at all. So yeah, but it all seems to point in the direction, if you ignore the lack of sharp pointy teeth. Well, here's another good one. We can't possibly be carnivores because carnivores' mouths work like that. They don't work like that. Ours work like that. Therefore, we must be herbivores because that's how herbivores chew, like that, not like that. To which I showed them a picture of a hagfish, which is a long eel-like creature that lives in the deep sea.
Okay.
It lives on decaying flesh of usually dead whales. Right down there, actually. It has this round opening in the front of its head with some rasping plates in it that rasp off the rotting meat. No teeth at all and no jaws whatsoever to do that or that. Nonetheless, it is a carnivore. So that argument's no good either. Can't be a carnivore because our jaws don't do the right thing. Oh, okay, rightio. Oh, but we can see colour though. Only herbivores can see colour, animals that need to see the colour of fruit to see whether it's ripe or not. So we're frugivores because we've got frugivorous teeth and we see colour. Good, awesome. Okay. Before we were humans, we lived in trees and we ate fruit. That's when we developed our colour vision. There was no negative selection pressure to wipe that out. It's been quite useful for us to be able to see colours as carnivores too. Why would it disappear?
I don't know. I find those arguments just so. I think the average person can see through them. They're just crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get how maybe people are unsure whether we can eat plants or not, but to say that we shouldn't be eating meat, it makes no sense.
No, none at all. I mean, the only thing they can point to is so-called associative studies like epidemiology, which suggests, they say, that there's an increased risk, of various diseases associated with the eating of meat, which they then take to be a causal inference. Yeah. Forgetting all the degrees of freedom that aren't controlled and stuff. Yeah, I think it's a form of not only theology, but also smoke and mirrors propaganda. I think it's a bit of mental illness, actually, to be honest, that people are, I guess, loath to be a bit judgmental, but I will anyway, people that are a bit limited and easily swayed to whatever in order to feel like they comply with something. Yeah, it does happen.
And I always look at it from the point of view of, the average person out there, because I guess, I don't know, my background is all in how do you help someone take on information, change their behavior by giving them a message that is compelling to them. And, what does that message have to be? What attitudes and barriers do you have to overcome in delivering that message, all of that kind of, I guess, consumer marketing kind of angle. And I think that people, and I was definitely one of these, when you are, busy in life and you've got a career and you've got other things going on, you're not going to have the time to go and dissect all these different nutritional schools of thought and try to figure out what your position is as a layman, as a non-scientist kind of background. So it's really hard for people to make that distinction. I mean, people who are studying it and still think that, then yeah, I agree with you. But for the average person out there, how are they supposed to tell the difference? If someone says the science says this, how are they going to be the ones to argue against that if they're not from that background? And this is what I find so jaw-dropping about where we are with nutrition is, my background is coming from a world where you have to deal with a government, and I very much interface directly with the government on many of their policies, and argued against some of them and had to accept many of them. And my experience with that whole area is that they generally they don't even come to a position until they have done a huge amount of groundwork and due diligence. And when they do, you have to comply with it. And there isn't any way around it. And, for example, whenever you go onto any website anywhere these days, you have to click on the silly button saying accept cookies, and there's no way to actually bypass that. And that has come out of a person in the world of data privacy saying that everyone has to has to accept that you're going to drop a little piece of information onto their device. And every time they visit a website, anytime, everywhere, they're going to have to accept it again and again and again. And from a business point of view, that's the worst. You don't want to be interrupting anyone's flow and getting to your product. It's inconvenient as a consumer. So we have had to comply with the craziest of standards just to protect the person at the end of the chain, the consumer, to have their rights fully upheld. And yet, in the world of nutrition, we are all complying, or we think we have dietary advice that is based on science that everyone trusts, and everyone, we set up all our institutions to comply with these dietary guidelines, and yet they're based on absolutely nothing. And that's what blew my mind, because I had such a contrasting level of standards between every other part of what the government puts out and what due diligence they go through to come up with that. And yet, on the most important factor that affects the quality of our lives as a species, they are so far wrong, and they don't even know how far wrong they are. They don't even admit how far wrong they are. They don't even question where they are at with it. And that's what I think is something. I mean, I obviously have views on why that is the case, but I was in a position where I could lobby the government, and I did lobby the government, and I was able to influence a huge amount of what they did, but never to the extent where you could have an impact on the human existence and experience to this degree. And there's something that really has to change with it, because it just doesn't stack up for me. We've got it so wrong, and this is a really fundamental thing. So I've gone a bit of a high horse here.
No, please. No, I absolutely agree completely with that. I mean, the other thing that occurs to me, and I was thinking about just as you were speaking there, was like anybody out there, based on recent years of evidence, quite clearly, any one of you out there who thinks His Majesty's government is at all interested in your welfare in any way, I think you need to give yourself several uppercuts, frankly.
Yeah.
Based on everything that's happened in the last couple of years. Whew.
People trust the mainstream and they go with it and they think the science, but even if the government are not, we don't like politicians and they're all a little bit sketchy, at least the scientists behind it must have done their research, and I was absolutely of that way of thinking not very long ago. And so to find out that this is all a bit smoke and mirrors. I mean, what is going on? How do we have to put up with everything else the government say? But then when you go and scratch the surface, it's all built on nothing. So, but this is a big thing that I think people need to appreciate. And it's a great story to have to tell people. You can just not sound like a conspiracy theorist at the same time. Yep.
100% of scientists agree with whoever funded their study. Frankly, it's true. Because you basically take a dump on whoever funded you by saying, actually, their product's no good or, whatever. You're not going to get too much more funding. Because at the end of the day, science is funded by industry. Why? Because industry are the only people that have got any money. So there's a vested interest in science. It's bastardized from the ground up. The whole system actually of governance is bastardized from the ground up. I mean, here's another example. While ever there are people struggling, starving, living paupers' lives, if they've got housing at all, all this kind of stuff that's going on. And I sat up the other night just because I was gobsmacked by the whole thing. And I sat through a farcical ceremony where some old man got given his mum's hat. It took an hour or so and probably cost £1 billion. What on earth is going on? How do you justify that? Man, we've got very political here, haven't we? But,
Yeah.
Couldn't
By the way, I'm sitting in the heartland of that.
Yeah. I mean, I won't ask you to comment. I guess I've already made the comment. But at the end of the day, goodness me, couldn't they just given the old fellow the hat and said, oh, here you go, have a hat. It's a pretty hat. It's got lots of jewels on it, stuff. Have this stick and have this other stick. and good luck to you, however long it lasts. Do try and keep your mouth shut for the rest of the time, which he's already failed to do, that bloke. That we won't mention exactly who we're talking about, but I think people get it. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there. Good place to leave it. It's been nice having a YouTube channel. Shame it's now going to be shut down because of the comments made in this video. Whatever. We've had a good run. In the meantime, go and buy lots of Cereal products. That'll keep the lights on for me. And they're good, by the way. They're brilliant. Absolutely outstanding. They do exactly what they say on the tin. Check them out. In the meantime, let's thank Olivia very much for her time. We appreciate you very much. Young lady, 48. No, you're not. Don't give us that. We won't have it. Just remind us once again where people can find you on the old social media, because they'll need something to do now that my channel is going to be banned.
I'm on Instagram and Twitter as Olivia Khwaja. And then my son has a little Instagram channel called Real Food Kids.
Okay,
and
awesome.
He likes cooking up little different recipes, so you might be interested in that too. Cool. It's linked to my profile.
Okay, awesome. Very, very good. Right. Join me next time when probably someone will be wrong on interwebs, because that doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon, does it? See you then. Ciao for now.